In Aion, Carl Jung wrote, "An encounter with the self is always a defeat for the ego." Now that sounds terrifying until you really understand what he meant by that. We're going to look at it from a couple directions from the videos I've been putting out about desire, how we recognize that the ego wants what it wants, but really the desire is pointing to something that is deeper within ourselves already, and we're just trying to find it externally so that we can then embody it internally. That's why it feels like a death when we get what we want, or we finally realize that we've been endlessly seeking the same thing and never fully getting satisfied by it. The ego wants comfort, control, security, pleasure, and will always get thwarted in that at some point in life. And so every time the ego gets thwarted in those desires, it's an encounter with the self. And we get to realize that life is much bigger than what our ego wants for us. Now let's look at it from the other direction. I had a video out on trauma, and the traumatized ego is not necessarily always looking for those things. They're just trying to survive. And the traumatized ego makes life much smaller out of protection and defenses to try to not get hurt again. But when we do that, we're cut off from the positive aspects of ourselves, like our creativity and our ability to succeed and achieve and feel safe in the world. When we're coming from that direction, the ego is all about staying small and staying protected and staying safe and limited, which is not necessarily the wholeness and fullness of the ego. And so from that direction, we actually do need to get a little bigger and expand. So when life shatters your fantasy and trauma exposes your defenses, or desire pulls you to an unknown future, the ego experiences defeat, but the self experiences opportunity, growth, and wholeness. So that brings us to one of the really interesting big ideas about Jung, is that we're always moving between inflation and deflation. If we are actually really living very small and not engaging with the world and living as effectively as we can and should, then we do need to inflate. But of course, we're going to inflate to the point where we are going to hit our limits or the world's limits and get defeated. So then we have to deflate again. And that whole process of inflation and deflation is constantly happening through compensation. And that's part of the process of individuation. So like and subscribe for more tips.